Meeting agenda items. Dr. Randall?
We'll begin with the public hearing. Just a reminder to the board that we will have an accountability performance report for 2014-15, and we will do that just prior to the board beginning the action items. And with that, Madam Chairman, we'll walk through each one of the agenda items and try to answer any questions that the board may have. The first item is consider ratification of quarterly investment reports, September 2015 through November 2015. Does the board have any questions regarding that? Next item on the agenda is consider approval of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the 2014-2015 year. And historically, board, we have, the auditors have given a report on Thursday and respond to any questions that you all may have at that meeting.
Okay, but I've got a couple of quick questions on this, and I know Ms. Ludwig can answer it.
Okay.
This thing is just full of information, and it amazes me how many different ways you have to report stuff to a number of different entities. You have my empathy and sympathy. A couple of interesting things I found here. A couple of them is just information to me. One, on the very introduction here, I was curious about this. It had an organizational chart, and there under the superintendent was an assistant superintendent, instruction hold. What is that? Is that the position that's been approved in the past and we haven't filled, or what is that exactly?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a position that when we originally did the organizational chart, we added that position on the organizational chart, but it's we haven't filled it.
It's not a funded position yet, or has it been funded or just not filled?
They're just not filled.
Do we have any plans to do that?
Well, we're almost at this size right now where we probably will need to consider that.
That was my thoughts when I'd been pondering that and then opened it up and said, I wonder. Sound like somebody else had looked at that as well. So, all right, good, thank you. Couple of numbers in here. On page 10. Most of the stuff I understand, but when I get to things that say unrestricted and unassigned, again, I'll probably learn exactly what those are after about the fifth time you tell me in a different context. But if you could just let me know on page 10, unrestricted funds of $15,900,000. What are those unrestricted funds?
Unrestricted funds are spendable funds. This page is referring to the government-wide financial statements, which is everything taken as a whole. What you're used to seeing are the fund financial statements. That's why that number's not where
that's not the 62
typically
million or 68 million.
Right. That's under the fund basis.
Okay, are those two similar numbers then?
Yes.
Okay,
they are similar.
One is government and one is the general fund number.
And you'll see in this report there are reconciliations. There's pages that reconcile between the government-wide and the fund financials, and you'll see what the differences are.
So that's.
And Justin, if you would like to assist, one of our auditors that was the lead auditor is actually here.
He'd probably tell me more than I would.
And he's going to do a complete report on Thursday night as well.
Okay, no, that'll be fine. Is that 68? Let me ask about that $68 million, which is on page 20. Could you call that surplus funds in our? And do you look at a target of surplus funds in the district just as a pad for unexpected things that might happen?
30%.
Yes, yes. That's we've heard us talk about 12.5% to 25%, and that we're above that.
Yes.
The auditors
number.
prefer 30%. So, and we're at 31. So
Okay.
we're right where we need to be.
All right, that ties it back to stuff you've already told me. Thank you very
Yes,
much. That
yes.
takes care of me.
Okay.
That was easy.
Wasn't that easy?
You let her off easy.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to consider approval of budget amendment request. And we're asking the board to approve 4 different budget amendments. Do you have any questions regarding?
I'll have my standard question.
All right.
The last 2 items, I'm used to seeing the plus and minus, means taking out of one pot, putting it in the other. when you got $327,000, $340,000, where are those coming from? And I know we have, there's another approval item back here for that 340, but I would just, where's the funding coming from?
Those are net increases to our budget. We had an excess revenue budget, plus there are some revenue categories that I feel will come in high this year, so it'll be absorbed by current year revenue.
Okay, how come this far in a year, we're see the need for that kind of increase?
Kevin and his team identified the need for the chillers.
Okay,
We've got two that are failing
Right.
at Campbell, and typically what we've done in the past is that when those start to fail, then we come back and amend for the budget for that, as opposed to trying to anticipate and budgeting it during the budgeting
so it
process.
helps if
Did
you
I
have
get that
$68 million
correct?
sitting there.
Exactly,
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
exactly.
I'm just trying to figure out how to play the game.
And is that something that would wait till the end of the school year to return? No, we would replace those during the
You'll
school.
have teachers.
Once
Yes.
this is approved, then they will get started on,
Well, it's
I'll shut
about
up.
an 8-week process to order a chiller. And so by doing it now, we can do it over spring break, and then when we get into those hot months.
Yeah, I just didn't know, yeah, I guess the spring.
Not
spring
gonna
break.
have teachers.
How big are those children?
They're 210-ton chillers.
Pretty
And that's a cooling capacity, not.
big. Yeah, no. Yeah. How are they? How big physically are they?
Gosh, they're probably about 20 feet by about 10 feet. Two of them.
All right, thank you. You knew I'd ask that, didn't you?
I did.
And the other program is our Summer School Now program. We're trying to address the needs of those students now, rather than trying to wait until the summer to try to come back and remediate.
Good program, thank you.
Next item is consider ratification of financial and investment reports. This is basically just an update of a report that the board receives each month. The next item on the agenda is consider approval of resolution approving list of qualified investment broker dealers. And we're asking that the Board of Trustees consider approval of the list of broker dealers through resolution. Okay. We're asking that the board consider approval of donations to the district, and we have 4 donations being made to the district. Next item on the agenda is consider approval of board calendar for 2016, and this is basically outlining various meetings and reports beginning in January through December of each year.
Okay, I see on that page for you that in August it says board member training report, December board member training report, and I remember only doing December. Is that just a repeat there that shouldn't be there, or did we do it 2 times? Under
We're-
August, it says board member training report. From December, it says board member training report.
We probably would just want to do it twice.
Okay.
The law requires us to do it in December. So,
Yeah, and I remember doing that,
Yeah, we need to.
and so I thought maybe we want to take,
Right.
so we don't have to do it twice.
We do not have to do it twice.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
When do we review our district goals? I didn't see that in here anywhere.
Well, it says in July, it just says monitor progress, but I didn't see that either.
Is that the team building?
Is that the team building?
That's what that is. The
It's
board
October.
superintendent team building is when we typically have done
And we
the
did
district
that this
goals,
year.
Is,
or priorities.
when the gentleman from TASB came, and that was the team building exercise, I don't remember doing any goals on that day. Because isn't this
That's-
wasn't that,
That was actually separate. I requested that. That was out of the norm, to just have a team building since we were so new.
okay.
So we just went over the basics, but we did not actually go over the goals.
So I guess I don't remember doing.
He brought them up throughout the workshop, but I
We
don't
just
know.
reviewed them, we didn't come up with
But
it.
we
No,
didn't, but we didn't,
We didn't go into discussion.
we didn't go into detail of deciding if we wanted to rearrange the goals at that time.
So should we specifically add that to the October along with what, I mean, obviously, we didn't get to do it, so I would like for us to, as a board, come together and review our goals, perhaps change those if needed, or just make sure that we are on target with what our goals are.
Being more specific.
Not necessarily specific, but so that we all have an understanding, and if, with a growing district, and the changes that we're encountering, just to make sure that our goals are in line with what we're doing.
What I was looking at was in July, where
Okay.
it says we are monitoring progress. Basically, elections are in May, and rather than monitor progress, I was wondering why we didn't use that month to go over our district goals.
Remember, we don't have an election this May.
Well,
We
I'm
have
just using
election
as a
every-
month of
every
May.
2 years.
If we get new board members, why
should
not
do that
have the
for next
district
year.
goals, team building first? And then in October, monitor the progress. It almost seems to me like it was a little reversed.
I agree with that.
So then we would delete the team building in October?
Remember, that is a requirement.
It's a requirement.
It's
Yeah, it's a
Required by
requirement.
law that you do the team building, and what we've typically done in the past is, as a part of the team builder, the board established the priorities that the district was gonna work on during the course of that year. This year, we did not do that, and we can certainly go back to that. And it's the board's pleasure if you want to move that up. That's certainly the board's pleasure.
It just sounds logical to do that in July. It's right, it's before the start of the school year, and in years going forward, it'll be right after the new boards are constituted, and it just seems like a reasonable time to take a look at those.
It is appropriate and can be done that way. The campus improvement plans and all of those types of things are done
Later.
In September.
Mhm.
And historically, they just followed with the board establishing the priorities. But it can certainly be done. That is not an issue. That's the pleasure of the board.
Is that also a TASB guided event, or is that something we as a board can take care of on our own?
I would recommend that it be facilitated.
Is that a problem doing something in July with TASB, or that's not a problem?
That would just depend. Remember, that is when you have the summer
extra men.
leadership, and they have both the summer leadership in San Antonio and summer leadership in Fort Worth, and it just would be a matter of scheduling if you use a TASB facilitator. But that's certainly something that we can see if we can get someone on the calendar in between all of that, if that's the board's pleasure.
And when you work with your cabinet for the following school year, it's the goals that we set up at that time, correct?
Those- The goals are basically what if you look at your agenda, it lists out the goals. The board establishes the priorities.
Correct.
And the priorities is what the board is saying. We want to make sure that the administration is spending time, effort, and energy on during the course of the year. That doesn't mean that you stop doing everything else, but those are just the priority items.
Could we have a review of what we did? Because see, what you're saying is if we did not do that in October, then the priorities that we have set were set not with this specific board.
That's
So maybe
correct.
we need to take a look at that again before we get too far along and see if there's something we need to rearrange. It could be, as you look at it, the priorities are where everyone is satisfied, but if not, we need to, as a board, make sure, before you get too far along.
Right. So we can, for the next meeting, just have a review of the priorities that we currently have been operating under.
Correct. I think they were presented at that October meeting, but I don't think the
Well-
question came up, do we want to keep these priorities in the same order?
No, we reviewed them.
Correct.
And basically reviewed ins and outs of them and how they apply to different things. But
Correct.
we didn't come up with any or make any changes. We just reviewed what was already in
Right.
place,
That's correct.
which we knew we needed.
But if anything had been
understand
glaring,
how
I'm
to
sure
follow
someone
that,
would have said
so.
something.
I also want to just insert that in July, I don't think as many things are going on, that we could concentrate a little bit more, rather than in October when we're dealing with holidays, we're dealing with a lot of other things coming up. So
But we do
reverse.
have extra meetings during that time because we have grant public hearings, so we need to just make sure we don't overlap any of that.
So would we agree it's worth looking into as far as changing that on the calendar?
I think, between yourself and Dr. Anna, you can take a look at that and let us know if that's a feasible thing to do.
So what you're saying is we're going to do both, though, because if we can do the goals at that time, but then we'd have to come back and do the team building in October.
Yeah, I still would recommend the
Yes,
team
we'd have to
building.
have both,
Yes.
and make sure we can get someone from TASB to come and help them out.
I have another question. In here, is there a place where we review board policies?
Each time you have the updates, like what's coming up now, the board has typically reviewed those policies at that point. We've not, if you're talking about going back through and starting with every single policy and the board reviewing each one of those policies, the board has never done that before. Primarily because now we have brought in TASB, and they initially back early on, we literally went through every policy to make sure that it was cleaned up and that it did indeed reflect what was currently being done. Because sometimes you have procedures that you do, and all of a sudden you do them. If you do them long enough, they actually become policy. And so we did all of that, but then we just brought that to the board as an update, and the board approved the update. And you've got 2 updates in for first reading, and then the board policy committee will meet next month and review those, and then of course the board would take action on it. But that's and TASB does all of our policies in order to make sure that the legal is taken care of. We don't do that. When the law changes, TASB does that. And they send it in and make sure that there isn't a conflict between local policy and the law. That's why you have legal and then you have local.
So if there is a policy that we currently are guided by or that we follow, and one of us or 2 of us, 3 of us, I guess it takes, to review that policy, possibly change it, is that something that we just bring up onto a board agenda item?
That would be one way of doing it. Certainly, if it is a practice that we're changing versus something to do, because there are some policies that if the board changes it and it conflicts with law, then that's a
Right.
problem.
Well, sure.
But yes, if there's a policy that the board wants to take and review, you can certainly tell us to do that, and we can pull it up, and then it can come back to the board as an agenda item
Okay.
for you to discuss.
Now, are you referring also to the board operating procedures? That's something different.
Well, I think I'm referring to the policy,
Okay.
perhaps the operating procedures in which it takes 3 members of the board to
Well, that's in
bring
the
an agenda.
board operating
So
procedures.
that's
It's a
operating
separate.
That's separate. Is there a time where we go over that, I guess? Is that a,
My understanding is we have to get that on the agenda to discuss it.
That's correct.
okay, so,
That's board operating procedures.
okay.
Are our operating procedures also reviewed by TASB?
No.
No.
Okay, the next item on the agenda.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Is there a place or an appropriate place or time during the year that we can review the superintendent's evaluation process? Is there an appropriate month that's more?
Tomorrow,
We'll be doing that Thursday.
Well, we're reviewing, I think, the contract, we're reviewing,
so
I
we can
think,
do
the,
that.
I think I'm speaking in terms of what Mr. Morris is recommending that we do. as far as reviewing the process so that we all understand,
The
or if we
actual-
wanted to change it, or?
The actual evaluation.
Yes, ma'am.
Form is what
Yes,
you're talking about.
yes.
I think he told us that after we do all of this, then we need to set up the intention to doing that in February or March. to-
Okay, so it would be
It
sometime.
would be after we do this
Okay.
evaluation.
And I guess that's what I was asking, is there an appropriate time? So perhaps March, April? Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is consider approval of resolution proclaiming Black History Month.
So we
We
missed
skipped the
page
calendar.
41.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Student
I'm
staff.
moving on. This is the student calendar.
I have some questions if anybody doesn't.
Well, mine was a question of, we're now going by minutes and not days?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct, and that was referenced in the information item, but the legislature passed House Bill 2610, and we're going from 180 instructional days, as we have in the past, to 75,600 minutes. And so we're trying to count up all of our minutes for our students, and it was a fun process, but that's reflected in the calendar that you see in terms of making sure that we're compliant with House Bill 2610 in terms of when the calendar starts and ends, and getting all the minutes in place, and making sure all of the Ts are crossed and Is are dotted.
And that's how we came up with that we actually can be off for a week at Thanksgiving.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we've got a lot of feedback in our
Take it
DSIC
away.
for several years about trying to get the full week of Thanksgiving off, and how it turned out, as referenced in the information item, when we looked at going from days to minutes. Secondary was about 2,000 minutes over, and elementary was about 2,000 minutes under. And so as it stood, obviously, we wanted to kind of make elementary compliant with the new law, and then just kind of balance those schedules out. So in doing all of that, the calendar is pretty similar to what we currently have. It just allows for having those 2 days off in November.
Mike, was that was that really the only thing that allowed us those 2 days off? Or you didn't take out any other holidays that they're currently?
I didn't take away, no, we didn't, the district did not take away any other
Well-
holidays, no.
You know what I mean, so it wasn't.
You yourself.
You yourself.
Right.
Yourself.
I had
And
to catch that
yeah,
then.
It's a committee.
That's right. I understand that. But we didn't take away any of those other days, like Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, that
No,
they
it's-
currently.
Right, the calendar is exactly, in fact, if you go, the last page of every board book is the current calendar, which you can always reference, but essentially, it's exactly the same as the current 2015-2016 calendar, but you get those 2 extra days at Thanksgiving. Now, because our teachers and our teachers work a 187-day contract, we're starting 2 days earlier with professional development in August, which is similar to what some neighboring districts have done when they've allowed that full week off. So that was the only minor tweak, and I believe if you look at the vote, we had 49 to 4 in terms of DSIC staff members, community members, looking at that and voting, and they were all aware of, they come a little bit earlier, but they get that week off, so they were on board with that.
How many minutes are we still over in the high school, at the high school level? 'Cause we're still over, right? Those 2 days didn't necessarily account for all of the minutes that we were over.
I don't have the minutes in front of me right at this second, but essentially we're 4 days over at
Still
the
over.
secondary, right.
But they have so many testing days.
I've got to say, when I heard about this, it's just crazy. Because honestly, we use it as an instructional calendar. And when we start marking it down to minutes,
Well, next legislative session will be in parsecs and furlongs, so don't.
because when I looked at it, it was, all right, we will get 28 days off in 9 months. And that's not including early release days. You didn't even put that down yet.
What's
I didn't see that. You don't have early releases marked on here yet.
They have a couple.
Was it, did I miss that?
I thought they did, maybe not.
I did not see early releases on the calendar.
No.
Oh,
But you
back
know,
up, May.
No,
Oh,
they're
I
they're
need
not.
glasses. I'm seeing it at the end of the
We've accounted for 6 early release days as we've gone through the minutes, but they've not been placed actually on the
We know where
calendar.
they are.
Historically, the board approves this kind of a placeholder calendar, and then elementary and secondary come in, set the 6, 9-week start-in times, early release days, those things. But we did account for 6 early release days with the minutes to make sure, again, it's going to be the same as the current calendar, just depending upon where the elementary and secondary departments place them.
Okay. So at one point during the holidays, the kids will be out 3 weeks within 6 weeks, 3 full weeks. I still go back to instructional for the kids. And I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, okay, how do they think the students are getting quality instructional time by divvying up minutes? What was their logic, do you know?
I can't speak on behalf of the legislature.
I knew you weren't going to.
But I can say one good thing, and a lot of our elementary principals commented on, is that we're actually adding instructional minutes. So we're increasing time in the classroom at our elementary
Elementary's gonna be
level
a longer
to be
day.
compliant
Yeah.
with the law. And if you look at surrounding Houston area school districts, the average time is 435 minutes per day. So we were over that at secondary already, and when we come down, we're in line with that, and we're raising our time in the classroom at the elementary level. So while I don't understand the legislature's motives or why it came about, it did give us an opportunity to look at how we've adjusted our bell schedule over the year and how the calendar looked as a whole.
So sending the little ones 15 minutes early a day is going to increase their instructional time. And what does that do with our bus scheduling?
So currently, and I know that Kevin and Mike are here, but for the most part, our transportation, they're already at those elementary campuses right at 7 and then going off on their secondary runs between 7 and 7:10. And when we made this proposal and we talked to our elementary principals and our general staff, which is other administrators, and going back to the principals, they said, by and large, the majority of students are on campus well before 7:30. The doors open at 7 for breakfast in the morning, and you have the buses coming in between 7 and 7:10. So you've got all the kids there for the most part, not all of them, but most of them, and most of the staff there. So they preferred getting started earlier in the day rather than tacking on time after everyone being there earlier in the day.
So breakfast is included in the minutes? Recess is included in the minutes?
Breakfast is not included in the minutes, but essentially how the minutes are calculated, it's from the opening bell to the last bell of the day. Everything is an instructional minute, whether it's advisory period or lunch or recess. So all those minutes count.
Okay. What about if the child is sick or absent, 3 days or 5 days? Is that going to be considered in minutes? That they're absent from school, not by days?
I wouldn't have the answer to
They did
that.
not make the adjustment to that. It's still days based on, and in fact, we're actually dealing with an implementation of compulsory attendance, a new law there that they didn't, I don't think all the way through, because they took out a lot of the ability of the judges to hold a kid accountable for excessive absences. And now the parent is held more accountable for the excessive absences. And there are a lot of things in between that you have to do. But that did not change from minutes to days.
It stays to days.
It's still the number of days that they're absent.
Okay. And so if we approve this calendar as such, we're automatically approving this time schedule, the bus change schedule? Because that was under information.
The two are separate in terms of you're approving the calendar and the minutes associated with House Bill 2610, but there is obviously some wiggle room with when we start and end. But the recommendation in talking with staff and talking with principals is to start at that time. So if the board didn't have any issues with that, that's where we'd move forward with, is starting at 7:30 elementary, which is similar to surrounding school districts. They start at 7:30 a.m. with their first round of classes, and again, going with the principal's recommendation.
Can you tell me which surrounding, I know that Katy starts later, Fort Bend starts later,
Katy ISD starts at
At
7:30,
for the elementary?
secondary.
Oh, secondary. Oh, no, I was talking about the elementary. Do we have other surrounding schools whose elementary students start that early?
I'm not aware of any direct neighbors. It's unique to Lamar CISD, something that we've talked to our parents about several times, and time again, our community has said they like the way it is in terms of having the elementary students come first and the secondary students come later.
Because I've already been asked this, those 4 extra instructional days, did we not shave off any minutes off of the high school because of our busing? Is that really our, that's what I assume, is because it would make it really complicated to,
Well, actually,
shave off
we
minutes at
shaved,
the end?
going on the recommendation, that's the information item, we've shaved 10 minutes off the instructional day at the secondary level, so they get out 10 minutes earlier than they currently do. And it's going by just obviously, if you listen to the campus leadership and the principals and you look at the average is 435 minutes in the greater Houston area, that's kind of the number that most folks are aligning with. And 415 for elementary, bump them up and then shave off a little. And primarily, it was really the secondary folks said we're in, more than everybody else, and we'd like to get off a little bit earlier in terms of extracurricular activities, both on campus and, watching siblings, jobs, football, basketball, cheerleading, band, et cetera. They're already going longer than most everybody else, and
Right.
just whittling a little bit off would.
Yeah, and shaving any more off would really be a problem for our transportation. I mean, really, bottom line, correct? I just want to have a good answer for the constituents on why we're going, and that's been a question already a couple of times, because I can already see how just a change in a bus driver can make that bus a little bit later already for the secondary schools. And so if we shave any more off, it would really, I think, become a bigger
That was
problem.
kind of my question, was if they're doing a double run, unless they're not going to do that, that if they're doing their elementary and get them home, and then they usually, this is in the past, maybe they're not doing that, then head over to the secondary, you're not giving them much time, because the secondary is getting out the exact, primary is getting out the exact same time.
Correct.
But secondary is getting out 10 minutes
Earlier.
earlier.
But their start time and the difference between the elementary end time and the secondary start time is still basically the same.
All right.
Because you're adding it, you're shaving it off on the end for the high school,
I'm not-
but you're adding the
I'm just worried
time on
about
the.
the buses being able to make their
Oh, yeah,
runs.
it would
It's
be
gonna
a bit of
be-
a challenge.
It's going to be tight. But
I think at the end of the day, though, too, we don't want to, shave off all of the instructional time for our students, and that 435 number is the average in the
But I like
surrounding
that
area.
the secondary ends earlier, because I would say a good majority, if you did the percentages of how many kids stay after school because of extracurricular, gets them home earlier, gets them finished earlier. And
Correct.
I like that.
My last word is, I just think, first of all, I'm from the old country, and instructional does not include all those minutes. Because if they
go to Austin next year
if
and
they did, those kids would be a lot. Well, I won't go further than that.
Anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
glad to see
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, David.
Now considering approval of resolution proclaiming Black History Month. Resolution proclaiming Career and Technology Education Month. Resolution proclaiming School Counselor Week. And the next item is consider approval of nomination of candidate for position on the Texas Association of School Boards Board of Directors. You saw in your information the qualifications that one would have to have before being able to be nominated for that, and that is not only a Lamar CISD board member that would have an interest and met the qualifications, but perhaps there's a board member at another school district that you have an interest in recommending or nominating for the position. Next item on the agenda is consider designation of Gulf Coast Area Association of School Boards positively promoting public school committee. And this is an agenda item that the board needs to identify someone that would actually serve on that committee. They will be meeting throughout the course of the year and working on projects of working toward positively promoting public school in our area.
Who is the current?
This is a new,
This brand new.
brand new
Never seen this.
group.
So if anybody wants to be nominated, she'd like to have a phone
the
call in the next
GCAS.
couple of days. Mr. Steenbergen is smiling.
We're trying to get on the grassroots.
Next item on the agenda is consider adoption of the Dean Lehman Junior High School mascot and school colors. And we're asking that the board approve Chargers as the mascot and purple and black as the school colors for the junior high school campus.
Here we go.
Now we are spending that money we talked about earlier.
Yeah, on page 30.
Consider approval of chiller replacement for Campbell Elementary School. And we're asking the board to approve Texas Air Systems for the purchase and installation of two 110-ton chillers for Campbell Elementary in the amount of $327,400 and amend the budget as necessary. Next item on the agenda is consider approval of traffic engineer study for the new elementary number 25. We're asking the board to approve Traffic Engineers, Inc. for the traffic engineering study for the new elementary school in the amount of $13,000.
I have a question. With this traffic engineering study, is this when we also would get a recommendation on whether we need a turning lane?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But, elementary 25 will be in Firethorn West, and so it'll be back into that subdivision, and they will recommend if there's any additional.
Okay. Okay.
We don't have a lot of control on
In a subdivision?
Subdivision.
Oh, okay. I
Inside
see.
a subdivision.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of new appraisers for teaching staff for 2015-2016 school year. And we're asking the board to approve Casey Lowry, who is a new hire.
Did
And
we
has
skip
completed
the
that.
geotechnical study?
I am just on the roll with skipping things tonight. I do apologize.
It's our tradition, Derek.
Yeah.
The one that you want
Uh,
to have ongoing for.
Consider approval of geotechnical study for the new elementary 25, that the Board of Trustees approve Terracon Incorporated for the geotechnical engineering services for the design of the new elementary number 25 in the amount of $6,100.
Can I ask a question on that? I understand what they do, and I realize that James wanted to keep going. No, I'm just teasing. But is any of this, because we're using kind of a rubber stamp, is any of that apply to the next school? Or is this completely different than that?
They start from scratch
different
with every
for everyone.
geological study.
Because where your
yeah.
soil
Yeah, I
is.
don't,
Yes,
So none of that, none of that's going to the...
Same contract, but different soil conditions everywhere.
Okay.
So they have to go and look at every site
Every site.
individually.
Okay.
You
That
can't
was my
carry
question.
anything over.
Didn't know if something
Yes.
could carry over.
Nope.
That was it.
Building the same house.
Sorry I answered your question.
Did he answer it correctly?
It has a lot to do with after we figure out where the footprint of the building's going to be,
Mhm.
and they come in and they drill cores in those areas so that we know how much
What's needed.
subgrade to take out, how the foundation is built.
How much to build up and everything else. Okay, thank you.
Every piece of property.
those are all of the action items, Madam Chairman.
Do we have the new appraisers? I have a
He said it.
question on
You
that.
did that.
He did
He did
it.
it.
You did
I have
that.
a question, though.
Oh.
Can we go back to that for a
Sure.
second? I was reading this article in here about the changes that are going to be coming up in 2017 and 18. The appraisal, the new appraisers, are they being, kind of being prepared for this new adjustment?
They are. We've actually been piloting the new instrument. We're in the second year of the T-test pilot, so
So you
all
have
of our
been-
administrators are actually already on that system. So as we bring on new administrators, they're going through the new system.
And it'll be changed from that PDAS
Yes,
to
ma'am.
that
I'm sorry.
TT?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Okay.
But she's actually doing the other.
She's done, actually, she did both.
She did both.
Almost all of them have already, their programs put them through one, and we're putting them
Great.
through the
So
second
you're
one.
that step
Mhm.
ahead.
Mhm.
Great. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Next item on the And on the agenda are information items. And as I had mentioned earlier, your board policy updates, we have 2 updates that are listed for your first reading. And then next month will be the second reading, and we will be asking the board to approve the updates. And then we have our tax collection reports, payment of construction projects, Region 4 maintenance and operation update, bond update.
I have a question on that part.
Okay.
Just trying to understand. Did I read correctly that in 2011, we've got a little over $8 million that's a surplus? Is that the way I would look at it for these additional projects?
So the way our report is set up, the information that's there that's basically says uncommitted, I believe it says uncommitted funds.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that is correct. Those projects have been completed, and that's per our accounting. Those are what we show as uncommitted funds. They have to go back to LCISD's accounting group for them to verify. But that's what our accounting shows of it, yes.
So that's a good thing, and we can then use that money for what we see, like the chillers and a few other things I think it was on here.
Those.
Not chillers, I'm sorry.
There was a
Ta-
list.
There was a list, that's what I was going.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Where did I miss that?
It's page 252.
The trailer stadium carpet replacement.
Yes, that's.
And that's
typically-
allowable if we have a surplus in the bond?
Yes, ma'am.
It can go to this, okay. I just needed some clarification. All right, thank you.
Transportation update.
Okay, well, just before we get that, elementary number 24, we're finally getting rolling on that. Are we still looking at November 2016 as the start date? Are we looking any better? Are we looking any worse? Oh, I'm sorry. Elementary number 24, page 242, it gives us, we finally got some things started over there. It says substantial completion still November 2016. Any improvement on that? Any slippage on that? That's still,
Well, there's been slippage with the weather. When this started, they were a couple weeks behind.
Right.
They've made up some of it, but they're still a couple weeks behind. So they're working on an on a recovery schedule to still meet the contracted date, which is November 18th
Right.
for substantial completion. We've asked the question about accelerating, and they're still in the ground, so they'd like to get out of the ground first, which is right now they're drilling the piers.
okay.
Once they've drilled the piers and then they have something stable to work with, it's easier for them to gauge whether they can speed that up.
All right.
But we're working with them. We understand that.
All right, thank you.
Transportation update.
I got one quick question under that. So, talking about the Department's Formed Accident Review Committee and reviewing each accident, have we gotten any conclusions about, because I remember the prior month, we were kind of overrun with accidents, and I think we had the same statement. Have we come to any conclusions yet?
They're starting that process to have the committee meetings, and several people are involved in that. What they do with each accident is just come back with
Mr.
a...
Jones, I know you project a little bit, but we want to make sure that we get your voice.
He always stops about 6 feet when he gets there. I'm like,
I may not be as fast as I once was. I guess trying to get myself a head start if I needed to make a run for the exit.
No need to run.
But they review each of those individually and come back with a recommendation on, first of all, they decide whether it was a preventable or a non-preventable accident, whether the driver did everything they could to avoid the accident. And once they do that, they come back with a recommendation. Does the driver, if it was a preventable accident, do they need to go through training? It runs a range from either just a warning to some type of training up to possibly some other consequences.
So you're just getting started in analyzing the causes.
Right.
Okay. When you get to the one in Bridlewood where a bus had an accident with a white Lexus SUV, I have a witness for you. Because they saw that Lexus run over the bus and keep going, so.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's good to know. We
It's good.
can use all the help,
I do have
all
a
the help
witness
that we
for you.
can
That bus
get.
driver telling the truth, they had to hit me and ran, it's true.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, thank you very much for these
Thank you.
reports. They were very, very helpful.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Next item is proposed budget calendar. And then, as requested by the board, some possible use of available bond funds.
Some of these things like maintenance operations, I would sort of expected that would have been in our normal maintenance operations budget and wouldn't be, something like Trailer Stadium, doing something like that, energy projects, I can see those as typical bond projects, but I would think like painting and carpet placement is that not typically in our maintenance repair operating budget? Or have we, anyway, I'll let you.
Yes, it is normally in the maintenance and operations budgets. Whatever, we went ahead and took the opportunity to say, okay, this can help us catch up and stay on track. So we looked at all those potential projects.
Okay. Also, I guess I envision when I ask this question to be a list about 14 pages long of stuff you'd like to have done in the district. Is that true? You've got all these projects out there of 10s and 20s and 30s of them, and these were just the ones that you thought were higher priority, and is that, you've prioritized them for us already? Is that what you've done?
I don't know that we'd say we'd prioritize them. I'd say that's what is coming up on our schedule.
Okay. Okay. I guess I was maybe hoping some more security-related stuff since, we've been talking to you about that, but I didn't.
Yeah, and I'm gonna agree with James. I guess I was expecting more of a facilities,
Laundry list?
Just some updates on some facilities, security updates, things like that, go by the wayside as we continue to grow and focus on building new schools. And a lot of this appears to me that it would be in a regular budget rather than excess funds.
And I have no problem catching you up on stuff, but I think we need to put our money at the highest priority, and so it'd be kind of interesting to see maybe some other opportunities here where we did put some priorities on.
Yeah, I mean-
I don't have any problems with any of these. I think they're all great projects, particularly that Huggins parking. Ms. Roberts will agree.
If we had, I know that the administrators at each campus, the principals, they make facilities requests, correct? Don't they file for those?
They do.
They're supposed to.
They do.
How long is that list?
Facility request meaning,
If the principal wants, facility,
A sidewalk between their two
a
schools.
sidewalk between their two schools that was placed by two different, like something like that, how long is that list of items?
right now, it's not very long. It just
What's not
depends-
very long?
It depends on through the year. Sometimes they'll request something like a playground or something like that. So we work with them to get a budget cost. Sometimes the PTA wants to make a donation. And so we get with them and we.
Well, the process isn't my question. My question is, like, at any given time, how many of those are sitting there unanswered?
As far as building modifications or?
Yeah, I mean,
something like that?
I don't know exactly how how y'all group them, but I guess, facility requests from campuses.
I guess what he's asking is if a principal sends in a request that the building needs to be painted, and it's not in the budget at that time, is that put on when we have the money, we will get to it? Or is it?
They're actually on a painting schedule.
They are? Right.
And sometimes they may want it done prior to when they're scheduled to have the painting done. But all of the campuses have a painting schedule. I think what they were referencing here was an effort to just speed that process up.
So some of these are maybe ahead of their schedule that if you have put down for, let's painting and carpet replacement.
Well, some of those will come up, like the painting schedule is, they'll be put in this coming year's capital outlay request. And so, like Dr. Randall said, that would speed the process up and help us get ahead of it, if you will, like on the painting schedule.
I guess what some of our concern is too, that some of these schools still need some security, you know, for their, because they're older schools and they don't have the vegetables put in. Have those all been taken care of, or do we need to have money set aside for some of those older schools? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well,
Y'all
I'll give you an
said that we had all the
example.
vestibules.
I know you know a million
Well, I'll give
things
you an
in this.
example. Recently, we brought up the concern with Huggins, not just necessarily Huggins, but a couple of the older schools. I'm going to use Huggins because that's where my kids go, and so I know how it's. So we brought up the concern that it's not really a vestibule. Basically, you walk in, and in order to get access to the classrooms, yes, you have to be buzzed in by the secretary that's sitting there, but you have direct access to the cafeteria. So.
But we have added.
Well, I know what you've added. So what I'm going to say is, after our conversation, you went ahead and just had the principal close those doors. But at any given time, and now the secretary has to let somebody into the cafeteria that way. But at any given time, the kids are flying in and out of that cafeteria, going through that main hallway to go to the bathroom, because the closest bathroom is on the other side. So I could have access to the cafeteria anyway, because those kids are coming in and out of that cafeteria going into the main part of the building. So while it's a Band-Aid, I don't know, I'm going to speak for myself, it's not a solution for us saying, okay, all the schools have vestibules, they all have the same type of security put in place. And that's the example I'm going to give, because that's obviously what I'm the most familiar with.
And we've brought that up at the facilities meeting before too.
I'll give you a concerning example. I went down to Beasley for the Memorial Day service down there. You've got these temporary buildings out there behind the school. You've got Highway 59 out there at the stone's throw away, and you've got a fence about this height of this table around that schoolyard. Around one bus sitting out there under cover, you've got a 6-foot fence with concertina wire on top of it. To me, a facility like that that's sitting next to Highway 59, as I go down there, I pass a van of illegals that's out on the side of the road, and 15 cop cars sitting down there within a stone's throw of that school. Things like that worry me, particularly on those that have high access to them, like Beasley, and like we're going to have Williams, because we're going to have a major road coming right beside Williams. And to have those temporary buildings sitting out there where anybody can come across and into those buildings, that bothers me a lot. So those are the kinds of security things I'm looking at. And if we've got some opportunity to do that, I'd much rather put it in the security than carpet that we're going to do next year anyway.
So am I understanding, like the painting and carpet, if we could replace that with the more security, fencing?
Well, these were just
This-
proposed projects.
Okay,
The board asked
that would
for a
go into the
list.
general
Yeah.
fund.
You got a list. It may not be the list that you're interested in. We provided you with.
More ideas.
I don't think it
We're
is.
looking for opportunities to put these funds to the best use in the district. And if there's security issues, I put that on my list. These other issues like the Huggins, the parking and parent drop off, to me, that's a safety issue over there. Trailer Stadium, I think fine. Some of these all of those are good. But there may be something we need a little higher priority on, and that's all I'm looking for. If we have some opportunities to do that, let's put this money to good use now. And if I have to walk on crappy carpet for another year, or I've got a fence out there protecting my kids, guess which one I'm going to choose?
So that gives you something more to think about?
Yes, it is a passion.
And Dr. Harrell, if I may, back response to your question, I don't really have a long list. I probably have 2 or 3, 4 items as they come along, such as Briscoe or carpet replacement. If those big ticket items are $300,000-$400,000, then I have to get with the principal and say that needs to go to a capital outlay request for the next budget year.
Well, so what would make you think there'd be 20 pages worth of those things? Which is what you thought? What would make you think that?
Because I hear, well, I can't get this and I can't get that, and I'll go back and I'll give you credit. We finally got that piece of pavement done, that sidewalk. But the
I think
first
that's-
request was put in 2011.
Yeah, why we thought maybe there was a list a mile long, was that, we were, informed, told that a request was put in, several years ago for a sidewalk, and that, and now it's getting done because it kind of got, nudged a little bit. So I guess we were under the impression that maybe there was lots of these things that we could look at and see, okay, well, but, so that's.
If not, that's great.
Yeah, So
I'm
there's-
curious now, do you ever have principals or teachers express a concern about the fencing and the locations of some of these schools, about fencing and the security for the kids, especially in the portable buildings?
I have not had requests for fencing like that from the schools. What we also get is the fire marshal comes in, we have to have egress on some of those, and for instance, that some of those we have to have panic hardware or something like that if we put the fence up, so that they can get out and get egress. And so those are some of the issues that we've had. I've never had anybody just request it.
Or just express a concern, because I would imagine if they would request it, that's out of their budget, they know that they need the money for something else. But I think in the general public, when they go to the schools, they do have a concern that that fencing is not around some of those portable buildings, like in Beasley.
I've been to 5 of the older schools that have the portable buildings, and just get out and walk around and chat and talk about the buildings, and there's always a concern. And every facility I've been in that has the older buildings like that, they have the issue with the vestibules, and they have an issue with those buildings out there, and accessibility from the outside to those portable buildings. All you gotta do is get out in the parking lot, walk up, tap on the door, and you're in a classroom with kids.
Or you find a child walking to the main part of the building to try to get to the bathroom and can't get the door open because they're not strong enough to do that.
Or I had one this size kid pass me coming into the building from a portable classroom as I'm going out. He's out there by himself. And
In the fall, we had a student, or at Huggins, we had an incident where there was a man sleeping under one of our picnic tables while the kids were playing outside.
anyway,
So I think-
appreciate you
Yeah.
responding to the request. As you can see, there may be some other issues. If we can get to take a look at those, I think it'd be.
We just wanted to give you a few more ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And the next information item is the advocacy agenda, and each one of the board members, you should have received this advocacy agenda at your, with your information. And then, of course, we've already discussed House Bill 2610 on the bail schedules. That's it, Madam Chairman.
Are there any other questions or discussions? It's my understanding we do not need a closed session today, so I will adjourn the meeting at 7:26.
That's right. Good girl.